This is Monica Perez here with the fabulous Shelby Hosanna of Unjected. You have seen us share a screen before on the Union of the Unwanted, and I have got in line to have her on this show to share her stories. She's got a couple of really fascinating things going on with us. Shelby, thank you so much for being here.
Aloha, Monica. Thank you so much for having me. It's my pleasure to be here. I'm so glad that we finally got to connect.
Yes, and I'm sure that so many people were interested in what you had to say about Maui, which is what the Union of the Unwanted was about. But when I started to understand where you were coming from and what you were up to, I became very interested in your business endeavor. And then furthermore, your journey to where you got to that place. And then we
Yeah,
can talk about like what's happening in your actual outside your window after that. But
for
so
sure.
so tell us, introduce yourself to my audience if you don't mind and tell us about your journey and what you're doing.
All right. Well, yes, I am Shelby Hosanna. I am a mother of three living in Maui, Hawaii. Not originally from this beautiful place, but I've been here for about 10 years now. And like many other of us, my experience with big harma, as I call them, was because I was harmed myself. And it was actually when I was a teenager. There was a woman doctor who told me, "Oh, you should take the HPV Gardasil vaccine. It's this revolutionary cancer preventative. I mean, yada yada. It's like the same narrative you could hear, just replace one shot for another, just to today." And eerily similar, it was a three-part series. After the third injection, I developed a myriad of heart conditions. And I was a healthy, thriving teenager to I couldn't even go upstairs anymore. Or when I was asleep, my heart would jump into the 200s. And I could barely function anymore. And what happened is I became immediately a patient to big pharma. They successfully had captured me in, gotten me on other medications to alleviate the symptoms they caused from their initial harm, right? And but no one at the time knew that this was a vaccine injury. Doctors would just say maybe this is an anomaly. Maybe you're having
Yes,
inside.
I know. I had that experience once. Some doctor gave me a pill. I don't even know what it was for. And I called her back and I said, it's like making me lightheaded. She said, that would be a very unusual side effect. So I'm not going to report it. It's like,
Yeah, right.
well, that's why you think it's
That's not
unusual.
happening to you.
Because nobody is reporting it. But yeah, I was super. I have to give a hat tip to Greg Carlwood from the Higher Side Chats for having on his show a couple of gals who wrote the HPV vaccine on trial. And
Yes.
because of that, that's when I started to look into vaccines and I prevented my daughter from getting that. And
Oh,
like
good.
that really changed everything, but just in the
Yeah.
nick of time because there was people literally, my pediatrician told me I was superstitious for not. I was like, I'm not, read this book.
More like, "Hey, you're hindering my insurance buyout, so, that
Yes,
makes me suspicious of you."
yes.
Because we know that they're sellouts. Yeah, and
It's the money,
really
like,
these
I think they make a lot of money. I think that's
oh,
their
they
main
do.
revenue stream is
Tens
vaccines,
of
like, you wouldn't think
thousands of
so, yeah.
dollars
The
from
main
bonuses.
yeah, the main
Yeah.
revenue stream for a pediatrician is vaccines.
Oh, yeah. And they have to have every single patient be vaccinated. That's their caveat, right? So you might be hindering them from getting their $60,000 bonus, just one patient alone. And so that's why they treat you so viciously, right?
Yes,
Um,
yes.
but so no one, these physicians, they regurgitate information that is from the medical schools, which is straight from pharma. They write the textbooks, they pay for the schools. These individuals really, quite frankly, don't know any better that they're breaking the Hippocratic oath. But they didn't know any better once I was older, and actually I was pregnant with my daughter, my first. That's when I started deep diving into the vaccine in complex, and I was shocked, and I go, wow, I think I had a vaccine injury from Gardasil, and I started doing my timeline, and I go, that's exactly when I was injured. And so have I clinically been diagnosed with that? No.
Well,
But
never
many
in
others, I'm
that,
sure,
yeah,
experienced the same.
never.
um, but that's what I learned about the lack of control studies, that there's not one childhood vaccine that has a real control study. And this is
Yes.
just mind bending once you
That's
actually realize this.
that's what I was listening to on the Carlwood, podcast, is that the control, like the placebo, is not
It's
saline,
just
it
another
has the
vaccine.
adjuvant in it. It has the only thing it has is dead, useless virus, but it has the
Yeah.
adjuvant, the thing that harms you. And,
Yeah.
I agree that, like, you probably will never know, but my kids, and I know a lot of people their age, have this fainting. It's vasovagal syncope. So I looked into it, and it's in VAERS as a recoverable side effect of the meningitis vaccine. But I didn't
Wow.
even think about it until so far after. I just
Right.
don't remember. But then I realized, like, wow, this is like in the books.
Oh,
Watch
yeah.
out because kids faint. I'd like ask people, like, nobody in my generation fainted, and people in the next generation faint. And I actually think it's one of those things, but we're probably never going to
Oh,
get
I
who's
think
going to prove that.
I would say most everything is a vaccine injury these days. I mean, after the 1986 Injury Act, where they took literally all liability away from these pharmaceutical companies, what do we see? Autism skyrocketing, eczema, allergies just skyrocketing. Children have this just all of these, myriad of conditions, these days. And they're like, oh, my kid's healthy. It's like, no, they're not. Look deeper. There's something else that's going on here. And a lot of people, they don't know about the control studies. They don't realize they've never been fully tested because they're taught to just trust in these individuals. And of course, we saw the same thing in 2020, 2021, the mask mandates, with people, completely not hindering any warning at all. And I'm sure you remember the feeling. And they go out and get their vaccine and they get their vax card and then post a selfie on Facebook or Instagram. And you're like, this is just like, I literally was just like, this is the most
Right.
mortifying experience
Yeah.
in my lifetime right now, to be watching these people I love, what I be considered quite lining up for a lethal injection. And so there was like a lot of grieving there as well, just like, wow, what is going to happen to these people that we love? And feeling ostracized and slandered, that we were the oddballs out. And thankfully I had already built up that armor from rejecting childhood vaccines for my daughter, my children. And so I'd already been used to be called the murderer, or
Yeah, I had never heard any unvaxxed person say, "I hope vaxxed people die,"
right.
but
I'm
I
like,
did hear I really hope I'm wrong. Like, half the people I love
please.
took that path. It's
I'm like, I
crazy.
hope we're all
Yes,
healthy, but
yes, let's hope that this
thanks.
horrible thing I'm worried about is not true. Like, I would love that, thank you. Let's hopefully that's how it'll pan
Quite
out, although
literally.
it's not panning out that way, but
Yeah, I know. It's not looking good. And so what did we see, not so coincidentally, at the same time as the shots rolled out? It was hundreds of thousands of women anecdotally reporting having menstrual changes after getting the vaccine or being with a vaccinated partner, even as far as working in close office buildings where you're surrounded by vaccinated individuals. And Pfizer, of course, lovely them. They had released their first little dibbles of clinical trials, and it's around page 9 they start diving into exposure to trial participants, which was something that I found that a lot of people overlooked. And specifically on this page, exposure to a trial participant, which is i.e., what I would consider to be shedding of the spike
yeah.
protein, they consider it within 30 days of conception. So what that would mean, if you were a man working around a bunch of vaccinated individuals, even you were unvaccinated, you go home and you impregnate your wife, that's considered an exposure in pregnancy. And they even say don't have unprotected sex if you've been vaccinated. I'm not kidding.
So
And
so they were saying were they using that definition to say, "Look at all these healthy babies who were exposed to the vaccine," or were they saying, "Watch out, like, this is a warning"?
I of course saw it as a warning.
Right, right.
They wanted, obviously it was their hint that, hey, the spike protein, we know that it is one in skin contact, sweat, it is in saliva, it is in all bodily fluids, right? So even breast milk. So this exchange can happen even through exosomes, just being through the air. You're getting spike protein
And
exposure.
they admit that
And
it's,
they admit
quote,
that.
"contagious," and I have to say, I wasn't even sure COVID was real until people started getting it, which was after the vaccine came out.
Right.
So
I know.
then I still didn't get it until I came into close contact with a freshly vaccinated person, and it was the first time in a year, like,
Exact
it was
same
about a
thing happened to
year.
me.
Yeah, it was about a year, and I was like, "Not worried, not worried, not worried," and I was just like,
Yeah.
"Oh," and I literally took a step back, and I was like, "I might get this from this person,"
Yeah.
and I did get it. I got it 2 days
Well,
later. It was like, "Wow, well, that was easy to trace."
and it's not that it's shedding the COVID virus because we know that they've never successfully,
Well,
isolated the COVID virus.
I could not taste or smell for, like, 2 weeks after that, and I was
Yeah.
sick, but, I mean, it was, like, not sick because I was congested and couldn't smell. There was it was definitely that artificial bioweapon thing, whatever
Yeah,
it was.
it
Crawled
was
up
the
my
bio.
nose and turned it
Yeah,
off.
yeah. Bioweapon, absolutely. I had the same actually, I had the same exact experience after vaccinated like family, friends that came to visit, and
Yeah.
yeah, literally COVID. I never got tested, but, I assume that's
But
what it.
wasn't it weird? Was it a weird some
Yeah.
people say it wasn't a weird sickness, but for me, it was
I couldn't
definitely a
smell
weird
any
sickness.
coffee, which was, like,
Yeah.
horrible for me because I love the
Oh,
smell of
oh my
fresh
gosh.
coffee.
Yes,
I'm
of
like, "I
course.
can't smell anything."
Yes, definitely. So, yeah, okay, keep going.
But, so exposure in pregnancy, that was like the kind of the final alarm bell, all these women with their menstrual issues, the exposure, quite literally being explained by Pfizer. So, we knew we needed a place for people to find safe partners, safe friendships. During this time, also, we were seeing those, it was the height of the mandates, people being kicked out of businesses, and we remember that weird time. And so we originally launched as an app for the Apple and Google Play Store, for dating and friendships and community.
Right.
But it got really tricky very fast. Like within our first 60 days, we had gotten about over 60,000 members, and a reporter had reached out to Apple to get a comment about, hey, Apple, why do you let all of these anti-vaxxers live on the App Store? And this is crazy. And they just deleted us that day. They kind of basically changed their terms and agreements to erase us off of the Apple Store, just that we were spreading harmful misinformation due to the COVID pandemic, and we were not a medical establishment. Uh,
But you weren't really giving the information, you were just offering a portal for people to interact with each
yeah,
other, right? And had
right.
you invested a lot in that? Like, how did you build that app? Like, do you know how to build an app, or did you pay somebody? Like, was it yeah, I mean, I would not know I barely know how
So
to use an app, but I like definitely
I
not building it
definitely
myself, but so I don't maybe there's a like, an easy way to
I've
do it or
learned a lot.
yeah.
I have no prior experience in the tech world. So actually, there was a third party company that does the zeros and ones, as I like to call it, on
Yeah.
the back end. All of the very complicated template was already coded out. And so then, using YouTube tutorials, we would stay up and code the front end key codes to
Wow.
match features. So it's definitely
Like
like a, and
WordPress. I've fiddled around. I used to just have a WordPress site, which was taken down. But so I know the feeling. And
uh,
there were a lot of plugins and stuff. You could do it. So
yeah.
I'm just wondering if you had a massive amount, like if they really cost you a lot of money by canceling you right away, or you don't even have to answer that question. But I
No,
just feel like
this has been such
to
a
deter
grassroots
it. Yeah.
effort, it was like it was I was just
Oh,
winging
good.
it to begin with
Great.
anyways, and
Yeah.
so,
Okay. Great.
there was never, a large startup fund or anything. This is just totally like bootstraps,
Yes. Yes.
and,
Right.
it is so,
Like sweat equity.
that
Real
right, just
sweat.
like
Yeah.
in the garage, kind of like Steve Jobs, like, "We're gonna, like, figure this out," like.
That's excellent.
And so, what the information that we were spreading was we introduced a social feed, so kind of like Instagram or Facebook, and so people could go and talk about stuff. And so that's what got us in trouble is, people would say, "Oh, the 5G towers are going to connect to the bioweapon, or you're going to be infertile or this or that, or sharing studies or just, basic basic First Amendment constitutional rights
Yeah,
of
right.
freedom of speech, they would circle it in red and say that, hey, as a developer, you need to delete these individuals spreading this harmful misinformation, or you need to delete the posts that they're making. And I was like,
I have
no.
a real problem with them censoring like that because you're definitely too young to remember, but I remember there being an issue like, can you hand out political flyers at the grocery store? Can the grocery
Mm,
store tell you that you have to go away? And if I recall correctly, the answer was they cannot tell you to go away, that you have a right to free speech because it's a public place. And they rested that on the fact that there's you use public roads to get there. Cops are called if there's a problem there. That's how they define public space. And I would argue that just using patent protection lawyers, that a platform is a free speech platform. I mean, I'm a bit of an anarchist, so I'm not going to say that they don't have
I
a
feel the
full
same
right, but
way.
yeah, but they piggyback on a system that I paid for. The
Right.
government research went into most of this stuff would not have been developed one off by private companies. So I
Yeah.
think that you had a right to, I mean, they have nuanced rules about the internet itself, but I think you have historically would have a right. And I felt that way about when I got taken down too. But
Yeah.
and Ross Ulbricht is in jail for people transacting on his, whatever this his Silk Road. I forget what they call it,
I don't
but
know what this I don't know what that
Ross Ulbricht. I know people hear about Julian Assange, but not Ross Ulbricht. He's serving like multiple life sentences for building
really.
a dark web platform, but it wasn't really dark. It was just,
Hmm.
you know, unregulated, and somebody used it to sell drugs, and they said that a 13-year-old girl died of those drugs, and they used all sorts of malfeasance. I don't know if they trapped him or
Oh,
what, but the
they just
guys,
went after him.
the what?
They just went after him.
Yeah, they
Yeah,
went
they
after him, and in
canceled
that
him.
process, 2 of the guys who were investigating him, one was a Secret Service agent and one I think was a DA agent, went to jail for their conduct in his investigation, and he was not allowed to bring that up in his trial, and he is in jail right now. And I would say he had an absolute right to
Oh,
not be
yeah.
responsible for that stuff also.
It and that's what they do, right? Because they own the cops and they own the judges and they own the court system and
They're all cops, I've
they
heard.
literally own every single one of them. So that's what they do. They do whatever they want. And so we're fighting against this massive system. And, yeah, of course, it was just the excuse of, oh, your First Amendment doesn't matter because we're a
No, it
private
doesn't.
entity and we can do whatever we want. We're a private entity and blah, blah, blah. It was kind of, then it
So
was
did they shut down the whole Twitter type thing? The
they
social
shut
media
down
type
the
thing?
whole app on the Apple Store.
Okay.
And then Google was in pursuit next. They were going to delete us off the Google Store. They were sending us a multitude of threats. They called Google, they used the word deceptive behaviors. I thought that was kind of funny. So they would say that we were being deceptive, that yada, yada. So it was kind of like, okay, you can't fire us. We quit. We don't want to be here anyways. You guys suck. And we're just going to go to a .com because we have more oversight. We don't have to worry about our censorship because these apps were just absolutely ridiculed. I mean, if you want to make even a grammar adjustment, you have to go through a whole entire review process where an app tester goes through, reviews your app. And these are like just, people that are their own opinions, biases. So if you could imagine somebody quadruple boosted going in and reviewing our app, you get flagged every single time.
Of course, definitely. No doubt.
And so .com was definitely like where we had more freedom. And so so Unjected has been living on unjected.com since then, and we're still have our features for dating, friendships, community, and then we also have community directory listings for blood, eggs, sperm, breast milk,
So that's a little
anything and everything.
controversial, right? I mean, some people like that IVF thing. What's the function that you're serving is connecting people, right?
Yeah.
Nothing more than that. So if people can check what they want, because I definitely think there's a market for that. And I've been wondering if our entire morality will shift to where you don't actually consider marrying somebody, like actually going through with it until she's pregnant. Like, I think it's going to
Oh,
be like they're going to
totally the
reverse
Handmaid's
morality.
Tale.
Yes,
Quite
or
literally.
Children of Men was another one that dealt with
Yeah.
extreme infertility. Yeah,
And it's already
a real
happening,
thing.
there's people that have been vaccinated that are realizing, "Oh, wow, I'm no longer maybe the partner, choice of many now." And, even though they call us the minority, I would beg to say that there's more unvaccinated people than, we could even lead on. I think they've been lying about that. But,
Yes.
we have to, as a species, we have to protect the integrity of our DNA. We don't know what the long term consequences of these genetically modifying mRNA bioweapons are going to do, not only to ourselves, but our children, our future generations. I get a lot of flack for the blood thing, like, oh, eugenist stuff. How dare you say something like that? Or people try to associate the word like pure blood, which I don't even use, but it's actually just like, you have a right to maintain your DNA. That is your right. And, I'll even take it a step further to say you guys should look into the Geneva human rights for natural organisms. Because as a natural organism, as a human being, you have humanitarian rights. If you modify your genetic sequence and you are patented, you are owned by someone else and you are quite literally a slave. And we already know that social security cards and birth certificates, these are all slave processes anyways, but they've taken it a step further to actually enslave your genetic code and use it against you. So, if you're looking for a partner, you should have that in mind. Even friendships and community, because at the end of the day, like, what does the government fear the most? People who get together in large numbers who know what's going on. We can sit and talk on the internet all we want, and they
Yeah.
love that because we're not together. We're spreading information, which is part of the process, but we got to get in person, because when they shut off the grid or when they do whatever they're going to do next, only when we have our community and our people around us are we going to be able to be successful against these nefarious, evil people. And so, I just implore, like, yes, is it about spike protein or about partners, or it's about all the above, but it's also just like, this is the time where we got to come together.
Yeah.
It's in a
And
very serious way.
I knew, cute. But also, yes, it's like broader than that, in that even if you're not just looking to mate with somebody, you can surely realize that this is a community that's more like-minded. But that was
Yeah.
a very interesting point about how the genetic modification affects, like, if you own your own genome, because I've read quite a bit, a couple of books maybe, about the GMO seeds and how
Yeah.
Monsanto was winning
Yep.
lawsuits against people who didn't want to be contaminated by their seeds,
Yep.
that they
And the
were
cross
annoyed.
pollination.
Yeah, they were annoyed,
Yeah.
and yet Monsanto would win, and that they then could not plant their own fruits of their own farm. And I mean, really, that's such a high form of trespass. I can't. I don't know if anyone ever ruled the other way. I'd have to see, but I don't think so. And I think that they didn't, because they really absolutely see the precedent they needed to set. But I did not see it coming where it was going to be a human genome. I should have, though,
I
because I
and
like
I
Michael Crichton, and he wrote about that in a book called Next. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, it
And
was good.
I really, I don't want to be a fear monger, but the more that you dive into and follow the money and you look at who owns the patents to these injections and what their goal is, it's like, 2 + 2 = 4. So they're all about the depopulation agenda. And so we're the opposite. We're the repopulation agenda.
Can you Oh, that's excellent. I love that, because even as soon as Elon Musk talked about the coming population bust, I was
Yep.
like, "Oh, yeah, the worm has turned." And also China turned off the one child policy, like all these things. And
Yeah.
of course, the COVID thing, like all of these things indicate to me that they probably intentionally overcorrected.
Yep.
But then that's a ship that takes it takes 10 or 20 years to write. So they're already getting ahead of, like, I don't think I don't know. I hear mixed messages now, and Roe versus Wade was overturned. Like, I'm getting the sense that the worm is turning, and I still think they feel like they have some control over it. But rather than, it would be nice to say they want to have, like, if you're in the rabbit hole like we are, they want to have supposedly like
Artificial
transhumanism.
wombs.
Yeah, like people
Yeah.
who are above us, two kinds of people, one
Mhm.
above and one like us plebes or plebs,
Yeah.
whatever. But then I would say like the answer to that, which would be tunnel people, I call them, or people, the outlanders are the ones who are pure. And maybe they have some pure people, like whatever it is, non-GMO people in like an heirloom seed bank,
Probably.
maybe there's an orphanage of heirloom people. But you're like the Amish, you're cultivating all these heirloom people, which is nice. But so
I
how
love
does that work? Is it similar to just a regular, a dating site in that you can look for other things than that?
Yeah, so, we have well, we're introducing lots of new features soon, but right now, currently, where it stands is, you can come into Unjected, choose what your profile is going to be for, what you're looking for. But all of our members get verified right now. So you actually have to attest to your unvaccination status by affidavit. So you
Wow.
actually say that you understand that lying about your status is sexual misconduct. You can't lie to other partners or to Unjected about your status, and that's actually how you get into the site. We verify gender and who you are, who you say you are. That's because ladies are free on Unjected as well. So it's kind of
Nice.
like ladies' night all the time. That was kind of
Yeah, that's excellent.
yeah, as women, there's that kind of proverbial statement of like, oh, unvaxxed sperm is the next Bitcoin. And I'm like, that's wrong. I'm like, it's eggs because eggs are way more
Yeah,
valuable.
probably not gonna be a
So
sperm shortage in any
yes,
category ever, although they are
exactly.
working on it. They are working on it. Sperm count is down, and there's something I just read about Mexico, like, rejecting American corn, and there was a patent 20 years ago. I think maybe Bill Gates bought it or that could be, but I
Of
definitely was a
course.
patent of this corn called Epicite, Epicyte, that sterilizes males who consume it, and my guess is they were shipping that south of the border, and Mexico
I have
realized
not
that.
heard of this. I'm gonna
Yeah,
have
I
to
could
look
be
into
wrong, but it seems like all the pieces of the puzzle fit together in that way. So it's not the end of the world, but there are still gonna be a lot more sperm than there are eggs, I think.
exactly. Yeah. So that's our ode to ladies.
Yes, very
Um,
nice.
and so when you become verified, that's when you can also select to have access to like blood and fertility directories. We used to have those things like public where you could just go post, but we've since they've tightened us, so we've had to keep it behind
That's
uh,
alright.
our special walls, but that we keep it actually with our partner, the Wellness Company, which is where Dr. Peter McCullough hangs his hat.
Oh,
So they've
nice.
recently helped redo our infrastructure on the back end as well. So now we've even got things just more secure, more technically sound than we've ever been ever before. And so they alongside their help, that's how we help verify people with an unjected nurse. So we keep everything HIPAA compliant. Since you're
That's
sharing
great. Yeah.
medical information,
I
and
mean, it's good security for you that
yeah.
you have defense if people, because if somebody wanted to come after you, you kinda have to have that stuff in place.
Well, and they've tried to do that before. We've had Jimmy Fallon do a whole skit on us about being exposed. Half of it was an entire lie, mind you. But yes, they
Did
come
you
after.
get did you get a spike in views after that?
Oh yeah, we got like 20,000 new members. I was like,
Yeah,
thanks,
that's
team.
amazing.
I'm
Great.
like, go
Wow.
get another booster. But
Yeah. That's great.
um,
I mean, any PR is good PR.
it's true. And but for people who like, like you said earlier, an anarchist, maybe if you don't want to be verified, but you still want to use Unjected, we're gonna have a membership option for you as well. So you don't have to go through the whole process of giving, information too much, and but you can still enjoy and utilize more private carousels of the site as well. So we've got lots of things in the works.
Once that like Twitter or Telegram type thing went away, do you have like a Telegram site, or like do you have a place where it's a little more communal, or that just they kind of need capped you there?
So the social feed was on the website, yeah, and so we're actually going to be introducing it back. So when we relaunched with the wellness company just in late July, so we've been kind of rolling out
Okay.
our features, cascading again. So the original social feed, like we had it, it won't be exactly the same, but we are planning on bringing that back. But of course, yeah, we got lots of social media pages. We do have a weekly podcast called The Unjected Show, where we love to connect with guests or members. You can call and tell us stories. It's
Oh,
kind of like
great.
a remake on Love Line. So we have a toll-free number you can call, or you can Zoom in and tell us about
So
your.
you work with Scott Armstrong,
Yes,
right? Yes,
yes,
I
Scott is.
have been wanting to get with him for the longest time about callers, because I used to have a call-in radio show, and the
Yeah.
one thing I really miss is being able to actually talk to people, and I knew he'd be the
So
guy,
that's
and
what we're that's
you
what
guys
we've
are
been
doing
trying
it.
to do. Yeah, so
That's
Scott's
great.
he's our superhero as well. He's on our
That's
Unjected team.
awesome.
And yeah, and so we do that every Friday. We live stream on the Unjected Show, and so we connect with people that way too. But yeah, I mean,
How do
geez.
people find that? Is that just on the website,
We're anywhere you stream.
like Odyssey and
Yeah,
BitChute
Odyssey,
and Rockfin
Rumble,
and Rumble?
Spotify, like
Are
anywhere.
you on
Or
Rockfin?
we're on Rockfin.
Rockfin,
Yeah,
yes, got
so
it,
you can
got it.
or you can just find our Instagram at the Unjected Show and or at
Yeah.
Unjected Official. That will give you more info.
What's your
Um,
website? Unjected.com?
Unjected.com.
Yeah, I thought so. Unjected.com.
Yeah.
That's an easy one. That's excellent. Wow. So I'm sure it's all in there. That's great. Yeah, that's super cool. And I could tell
Thanks.
that, yeah, things were rolling out, that this was,
Yeah.
you're hitting the ground running, but that there was more to come. So that's super cool. I hope it's very robust. I love Ladies Free. That's a great
Thanks.
idea. Is there,
I
so having been married before, like I'm married to my first and only husband, and I
yeah.
never had to use a dating site. Although in the early years of marriage, I was like, if there had only been a dating site, I might have had someone more compatible. But anyway, we grew
You
together. Oh yeah, he doesn't. He's like, what? What? I'm like,
That is
"No,
so
I'm sorry.
funny.
Did I say that out loud? I just was. I don't know. so, I don't really know how they work. But but you see, because I always think like you've got the reproductive age people, that's one thing. But then you have
Mhm.
post reproductive people, or people who are like not ready for that yet, like younger
Right.
people. So is that just another box to check? Like, I'm over, I'm done with that. I'm divorced. I'm not having any more kids. Like,
Yeah, so it's just like different filter options. So, if you can, yeah, it's a multitude of different,
got it.
algorithms or things that you can choose and then search based, search others based on the same things. So if you wanted children, you could say, oh, I'm going to check that box. Or if I don't, I'm done. I've already got, I already
More
got
than
3 kids.
enough.
I'm good. So we're going to say no. And so, or, like hobbies, interests. We also have like
Yeah.
over 200 interests that you can choose from. Some of them are very cheeky, not ones that you're going to see on other dating sites like off-gridding or churning
Furry,
butter, or,
furry stuff.
collecting water, or, emergency prep. So
Oh, I like, okay. So not furries. You don't have a
yes,
furry box. Okay.
no furries. We actually probably have like an opposite furry box, like anti-furry box. But
It's only recently did I truly understand what that was. Like, I did not understand.
it's
I
unbelievable.
really did not understand until somebody started sending me pictures. Like, there was a conference, and they're
Yeah.
like, "It's not
Do
what
you
you
know that they
think."
let the children do it in school too? I've heard that
Well, I
schools
mean,
will let them have litter boxes in the bathroom for furry kids. I'm not kidding. You'll get if you want to go on a deep dive. That's one.
oh my
I'm like,
gosh, I
this
don't know if
is
I'd recover. I try to stay
the
away from the
Twilight
rabbit
Zone.
hole within the rabbit hole, like the super dark stuff. But I mean, beanie pajamas with ears, like that, there should be nothing wrong with that. Like, there's nothing, I cannot believe that that has been corrupted. Like, just
Everything.
I'll never look at A Christmas Story the same again. Just like, get that off.
That's like our
Your
running
aunt
joke
problem,
on
yeah.
Unjected is, we don't have, since we have less population, we don't have any serial killers, we don't have any pedophiles, we don't have any furries. We got We can just
My
keep adding to the list.
Yes, that's great, that's great. Okay, so, yes, prepping, I totally can get behind, like, I stay away from electricity or whatever,
Yep.
but yes, okay, excellent.
So
No,
yes, it's also just all filter options. So when you go in, you can, curate your profile to what you're looking for. And then, we even have like age slider bars. So you can choose the
oh,
age range
nice,
if you want to, look in. So
nice,
yeah,
I like
it's
it.
it's easy search functions. Mhm.
Yeah, so the age thing is always, like, super tricky because you need somebody who's young enough to be sexy, but old enough to be wise, like, in
Yeah.
my like, that's what they taught me in radio, they're like, "Never tell anybody your age." They need to put an
What?
age on you. Yeah, they were like because everybody's idea of age is different.
Okay.
So they wanna look at you and listen to you and think she's, mature enough, interesting enough, smart enough, but she's also young enough to be sexy. And if you gave them a number that didn't match what they thought was
Now,
that sweet
I don't
spot.
like that. I
I
think
know.
you should
It did
always
ruin me. Yeah.
you should cherish your birthday. We're so
I
lucky to
know.
be alive.
Yeah.
And if someone has preconceived notions like their cognitive dissonance on age
Yes.
being a maturity level, you know, I I see what
Okay,
they mean,
good.
but
Yeah,
yeah,
no,
forget
because it
it.
actually ruined me. I had no problem with
Yeah.
my age until they told me that, and I was like,
See?
"So you think
And
that was,
they
like,
just wanted
secret?"
to like give you like an issue, like for
So it
no
was, like,
reason.
sexist stuff you're saying. I was the
Yeah,
only chick. They're like, I
right.
think radio is not great for chicks because their voices are too high usually. So they're,
Mm,
not in a bad way, just, like, it's hard to listen, like, it just gets a little
I
high
get
on the
it.
radio.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah, guys are
so there
smoother.
just aren't a lot of chicks, and there's, prejudice against, so maybe it was, like, maybe they
They were
were just
probably
trying to
hating on you because they weren't you.
control me.
Yeah.
There you go, there's some positivity.
They hate you
No, but
because
yeah,
they aged you.
interesting, yes, yes, yes. Well, I locked my age in back then, so it's never changed anyway. Just 40 something and I always will be. So, okay, all right, that's super awesome. So I want to talk about what's happening now, like where you are, but
Yeah,
that's unjected.com is probably the best place to start. That's awesome. That's where I
yeah,
read your story. And I'll put in the show notes like that Union of the Unwanted that we were together, and we can wrap this up again at the end with where you want people to go and
cool.
what anything you want to tell the folks. But in this next little bit, can you yes, I was introduced to you because you were coming out of Maui right on the tail end
Mhm,
of those fires. Horrible story. I'm just horrified. It seems to me obviously a land grab,
yeah.
maybe more. Now
Oh,
that
yeah.
some time has passed, can you, I mean, maybe just give a little, very short, I don't want you to have to repeat stuff you've said many times, but like a little thing of your experience in that, during those days. And then now, what you really think happened, what is happening, just anything you want to kind of give us an update. But I would like to hear, if you wouldn't mind, just so people can
Yeah,
understand what the situation was, what your perception of that event was.
yeah. I mean, yeah, I would compare this to, and I mean, I was young when 9/11 happened, but I would say this is the next 9/11 of this generation that is currently being covered up. And so I've lived here on Maui a little over 10 years. I spent actually about 4 or 5 of them in Lahaina on Front Street. I lived on Front Street. I worked on Front Street. So I'm very familiar with this area. My friends are there. Like I was like my stomping grounds when I first moved here. And my mom actually still worked in Lahaina. So she barely escaped that day, actually. And so, she also had a different perspective. And so, pretty much immediately from when she came home, I knew something was nefarious when she said that, the police were barricading her in onto Front Street because she works at one of the last exits onto the highway. So there's like no reason that she shouldn't have been able to just leave. And sure enough, she goes to leave, and there's a cop that says, "You just need to go back into Front Street. You need to go that way into the fire." And they had blocked off every exit, since. I mean, after the fire, there was no military. The officials didn't know about it for 12 hours. Citizens were left to clean up bodies. I mean, it was an actual horror scene. And I would say the death count is in the thousands,
Do
and
you
they are.
really think so? Because how much could the population have been to start out with? I mean, that would be like a 15%. Oh, maybe not, but it would be
So
like a lot, like 1 in 10, like a true decimation maybe.
yeah, and there's a lot of what's interesting is I think they use this as a flagship experiment because we're so isolated and it's easier to pull off things when you're in an isolated
Yes,
area.
yes.
And they can cut off communication and people don't even actually know what's going on. And quite literally, they say in the census that Lahaina had about 13,000 plus people. I would beg to say there was at least 10,000 or more
Right.
undocumented
Right,
citizens
okay.
from countries all over. And
Or even just didn't register as living there, you know what I mean? Like, that's not weird.
but like many people working
Right.
just cash jobs under the table, too terrified to say that they were in this experience. One, so I really do think that the count is extremely high. I think that the media is lying about it. They immediately built a large fence around all of the
Ugh.
disaster zone. They've arrested homeowners for trying to go in. I mean, when is a natural disaster occurred where the FBI shows up, the National Guard, they build a fence around it, they arrest you to go in there. There's a no-fly zone, and you cannot park or go into the town. This is a crime scene.
No
And
fly zone is the one thing that they cannot possibly have any justification because they could, for everybody else, they could say you could get hurt. There's something, we're not
yeah,
sure if there's exposed gas lines or whatever, but a no fly zone,
the no-fly zone is really curious one.
like a drone, you can't send a like a
No
camera
drone,
drone.
no drones or commercial flights or private flights. And they claimed they started the flight restriction on August 14th through like the 23rd, which mind you was a week after the fire. And they claimed the reason being was to have a safe area to fight fires, even though the fire was extinguished. That literally makes not one bit of sense. The pilot logs for 8-8 have
Yeah.
also been scrubbed. So whatever these pilots were seeing when they were coming into Maui is also being covered up. I personally went down to the forensic facility and I saw the refrigerated trucks being guarded by tactical command police. He said that there was bodies in there. He said it. So, they literally took this official death count and then they resurrected people from the dead. It's actually been going down. They said it's been going down. And so, mind you, that, yeah, no undocumented people, no tourists are included in this count. We're still about 500 children are missing. And I'm
Really?
sorry, where is they're just claiming that we're crazy people for even asking about where missing children are. But they're saying, oh, they left island. They, maybe are in private school somewhere else or they're on online school. They have no count for
Are
the
there
children.
any parents saying that their own children are missing, or is it whole families that seem to be missing? That you know? I mean,
I
I don't,
I fear I fear that many families have perished as a whole.
Right,
Because no, there has not been, and that's kind of like why it feels like such a twilight zone because you're like, where
right.
are the children and where are the parents?
Yes, right.
Where is anybody talking about this? It's bizarre. But I know that they've officially said that only one child is passed, but I know somebody that pulled 9 children out of the water himself dead. So this is a lie. There's hundreds of, I mean, it's like I literally
Wow.
I could actually scream
Right, it's
about it.
awful. Yeah, sorry.
But to be
Sorry.
honest, no, it's okay. It's what I think I'm here to help
Mhm.
unveil. And actually, in the process of this, I've actually helped author a book. You can go order it now. It's on Amazon. It's called Burn Back Better.
Oh my
And it's
gosh. Wow,
yeah,
so that's great that you're getting, because now is when people wanna read the truth if you
yeah.
can,
And
as
this
much
is
as
like
you
going to
can
be
put together.
the dissertation of like because there's so many details. I mean, the amount of
Right.
details that we could probably talk for 3 hours just on the fire. And so we've taken this information. It's actually co-authored with my friend uh, Stephanie Perucci. She's a wonderful author. She actually was the one who introduced me to the wellness company. So she holds
Oh, cool.
a dear spot in my heart. And so we came together to compile this information into this book, Burn Back Better. And of course, why is it named that? Because we know Build Back Better is bullshit, quite frankly. And this is disaster capitalism and mass murder through actual destruction of land. They want us to have to flee our homes and go to their FEMA camps, and they want to destroy the land, and they want to clear it for their, their smart cities. The new thing is smart cities are not going to be green, they're going to be
Yeah.
concrete, they're going to be paved, and
Yeah,
so
they
you got to
yeah.
start somewhere.
They had, this I did a lot of work on 15-minute cities, and prior to COVID, they called them digital cities, and they just
Right.
didn't catch on, but the whole thing, they literally changed the name to make it more, like, deceptive in what it was meant to do. And I just heard somebody say the SMART acronym, SMART, means something, I
Hmm,
don't know if
I don't know that.
someone was joking or what, it was surveillance. I'll have to look it up in a second, but there was an expression that I noticed in one of your, in Maui, there was like a bill that had come out right before that
Yeah.
had, it wasn't Build Back Better. It had a
The
different,
emergency proclamation.
but it was actually before there was a problem, and it was called something. I can't believe that I don't have my
Are you talking
finger
about
on
the
it.
HRC, the emergency proclamation law that Josh Green signed?
Was that before the fires?
Yeah, so it was on
Yeah.
July 17th. He signed his emergency proclamation that gave him carte blanche ability to do land development after a natural disaster. It gave the state complete ability to seize the land if there was a natural disaster. And he also repealed the Sunshine Law during that, which is the actual public having like public discussion on the development. So he repealed that as well. So, I mean, it's just, does it get more obvious?
There was another, I think it was tangential. I don't think it was directly related to the fires, but it was called Build Beyond Barriers. And
Oh,
there's
yes. I've
yeah,
heard of
that
this.
was yeah, that was one of the things. I have it as, it was about that it was a cost of living emergency, and they needed to, like,
Hmm.
bring in maybe affordable housing, and
Hmm.
that was before the emergency too, and I just feel like that dovetailed with
Yeah.
that bill to foreshadow a reason to wanna clear that land. And I remember, I love Maui, like, I live in LA now, and the only good thing about, that I felt hopeful about moving to LA was how close it was to Maui. And I
True.
just, I totally wanted to go there all the time. Anytime we can take a vacation, I'll always go to Maui. And I remember, and I even have some connections with people who live there. And I just remember thinking, wow, people can live here. Like, wow. And I guess my husband, like, we should buy a place in Maui. Like, we should just live there. And he's like, I didn't know this place is really expensive. I was like, no, I think normal people can live there. Like, we could try to figure it out. And now I'm like, oh, yeah, somebody else noticed that. And they were just like, look at these normal people living here. We need to light this on fire. Yeah.
Pretty much.
I
And
mean, not to
yeah,
laugh, because I know it's a horrible, horrible
it's,
situation.
yeah.
But I find if you cannot laugh sometimes at the absurdity of what it looks like,
If,
these guys, they're in closed room meetings. They know
yeah,
people are going to die sometimes when they do
yeah.
these cockamamie things.
Okay, they do. If
It's
people
just
knew how evil these puppets in the shadows were, and they would literally jump off buildings. And people would be,
they did. That's what they did on 9/11. Like, those
yeah,
people blew their buildings up, and they had to jump
right,
out the windows because they were burning
right.
to death. And, like,
People
that is
would
a
commit
metaphor.
suicide if they
Yes,
knew how
that is a
evil,
metaphor for
evil they are. And and it doesn't get more like, I believe they put everything in her face, like like even the name Josh Green, like they're just making fun of us. He's obviously a left puppet.
kidding.
We
Yeah,
know
Josh
that.
Green's kidding.
He travels all around and talks about how Hawaii is going to usher in the smart city. But he's been doing this since a lot. This is not new for Josh Green. He was up on his whiteboard talking about how great the vaccine was just 2 years ago. He's nothing new about this character. But I do think that this was a very intentional land grab. It was the most ancestral Hawaiian land. Um, that's been passed on for generations and generations, and it's worth billions of dollars. And there's so many millions of eyes that look at Hawaii and come visit here, and they want to use it as a template so they can recreate it other places, because these people are evil and nefarious, and they actually use astrology on their side, and they use energy on their side, and they use everything on their side. And they know that Hawaii is an energetic portal. They call it the Stargate portal. It's a place to breed nefarious activities from this mother womb of the earth. And that's why they wanted to, do this here. And they did bomb the people, as far as I'm concerned. I do feel like this is a domestic act of terrorism, whether it was arson, whether it was direct energy, whether it was some sort of technology used on the people. I absolutely think so. And that's why they're going to great lengths to cover it up. Because there is a massive amount of children who are also in this casualty. But what I think in this moment also, and we get into in the book, especially, as deep and horrible as all of this is, we can use this template for freedom as well. And we can, lift the veil for even more people who are still yet getting red pilled and going, wait a second, maybe they do want to mass murder us. Maybe the government is out
I
to
mean,
completely
every
kill
time
us.
I think like, just don't always think the worst of a news story, or maybe I overreacted. Those are the only times that I have to kind of like
Yeah.
issue a retraction. Like, gee, I am sorry. That guy is a complete fraud. Like anytime,
Yeah.
like if ever, and it's rare that I kind of give somebody the benefit of the doubt. Rare. But the few times that I have, it's just, I mean, you just see that it's just not true. And
Yeah.
I'm looking up smart. It looks like it means specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, and timely. But that
It's
means
just a bunch of
absolutely nothing.
adjectives.
It means nothing. Sorry. Never mind. Never mind. Why? Because it's
I
written in all caps. It's written in all caps. So I was like, what could that mean? It has to mean
I
something.
I bet there's still more to it. There's
Oh,
probably,
yes.
because you
Yes.
were onto something with the surveillance on the S. I'm
Yeah,
like,
surveillance,
yeah,
monitoring,
I think so.
analytics, yes, recon, and
Totalitarianism.
technocracy. Yes, yes, exactly, exactly. So it's for technocratic totalitarianism.
There we go.
So yes, I agree, and I actually do feel like Maui is, and Hawaii generally, but like Maui specifically, is just the most perfect place on earth. Like both what we were talking about in Union of the Unwanted, like it is the most remote piece of land on earth. It's as far away from other land. It's further away from other land than any other piece of land.
Yeah.
And which is funny because they called it the Sandwich Islands. Like when England first, like, why are they, what was it? You know what I mean? Like it's
Right.
sandwiched with nothing, like two sides of the Pacific Ocean. Uh, and and I mean, it's just paradise, and I even wonder about, like, the chemtrails here in LA drive me crazy, and
Right.
this I just don't like it. And I thought Hawaii would be a place where it would be hard to kinda keep them over the land because
Yes.
they would just move past it,
Yep.
like, you'd have to really plan ahead. So, do you feel like you're a little bit protected from that? That was the number one reason I wanted to move to Maui.
Yeah, actually, that's a great point. So, with our trade system, which is, totally unique to only here in the world, where it, swirls off and around, yeah, it is hard to keep like a chemtrail system here. And even actually, the day of the fire, people reported seeing a lot of spraying and like chemtrail like uh, fumes in the air. And it
It
was
would have to
really,
be lower, you
yeah, it
know,
was like kind of
it
like a
wouldn't, yeah.
haze. It was definitely whatever it was. It was adding to, maybe fire starter, like we know with they put aluminum in there
Yeah,
and all
yeah,
this
yeah, definitely,
chemicals.
yeah.
I think that they were doing something the day of to help aid in that. But yes, like any other place, do they want to just destroy? Yes.
I
Thankfully,
know.
the elites live here, so
Mhm.
many of them. So it's like, do they want to completely demolish where they live? I doubt it. I almost wonder, like, is it nothing to do with them in like smart cities, and it's actually to do more with uh, maintaining U.S. military occupation on Hawaii, because we're going to plan a future war with China, and
That
military
too, I thought of
leases
that.
are expiring for Pearl Harbor. What does that mean? We have to. This is an illegally annexed,
Yep.
territory. The only reason that Hawaii is a state is because
Yeah.
the military stole it. So is that how they further push occupation here because this is the only spot between here and Asia.
Well, and I'm
This is
sure Asia would wanna
critical.
occupy it. Like, if there
Mm,
is a war, like, that would be where they'd wanna be. So,
that's
it's,
right.
like, definitely the forward party would be there, and
Yep.
even if it's not an actual hot war, even if it's a trade war or whatever, even if it's
Right.
an immigration war, they would want that would be the place to wanna be. Yeah, I've
Yeah.
always thought that it had some really, just, like, the most value. So, if I would think that they want it occupied exclusively with people they can control. And of course,
I think
like
so.
the bigger they are, the harder they fall. They're gonna get the guys who have a lot to lose and would never stand their ground. I mean, I've seen
Yeah.
that happen. Wow. So yes, I'm sure that that was a super painful situation, and it's still lingering in that, and that you have to just turn that off to be able to talk about it. So I really appreciate that you're willing to do that,
Of
probably for the
course.
millionth time.
No, it's
And
okay.
I do appreciate it. So, and your the Unjected, your endeavor sounds really interesting, and I'm so glad that they didn't get you down. Like I would have been, I was totally determined. When my tiny little WordPress site went away, like I never rebuilt it. Really, I was just like, oh, I give up. I give up. So it's great that you didn't give up and that you have support and energy. And it sounds like something that totally voluntary. People don't like some of the aspects of it. They don't have to, engage in it, and you can
Yep.
just not check that box and not deal with that, process. So that's super cool. And why don't you just recap, tell people the best place to find you, and then I'll probably see you again sometime on the Union of the
Perfect.
Unwanted.
Yeah, I appreciate you having me on and helping spread the word, even further about our mission and of course about the fire. As devastating as it is. I don't mind to talk about it because people need to know, and it's our job as truth seekers and as warriors in this time that it doesn't matter how painful something is, we have to help shine light on the darkness, to help it scurry away. So I appreciate you having me here and thank you. And so everyone can go, find me on unjected.com. We have our Instagram and Twitter at Unjected Official. And then you can, of course, find the podcast at The Unjected Show. And then, gosh, what else? Yeah, we live stream on Friday evenings if you ever want to join us there. And Burn Back Better, you can go order it on Amazon right now for pre-order. It'll be out on October 1st. And geez, I think that's all of them.
All right. Well, I'll put all of that in the show notes, which people can find at monicasdeepdives.com. If you think of anything, you can always shoot me a little email after. I thank you so, so much for your time and your efforts and your energy. Shelby Hosanna
Thank
of
you.
Unjected, thank you very much for being here. This is Monica Perez, and thank you all for listening.